Okay, so to start, we're going to begin talking about the impact of the jazz that has had on history and society over over the years since its creation to now. So first, we can talk about clothing. So clothing, as it changed, it first started changing in these clubs, these jazz clubs that popped up, these dance halls. As these spread, all of the clothes when people were dancing, these these clothes changed because it made it easier for people to move around. It made it easier for people to dance to the jazz. So the style of this clothing changed to definitely make it easier for dancing to these jazz tunes. In these clubs where the people were dancing, it was also where a growing number of women had a place to go to act as an outlet for their rebellions against these traditional gender roles that they were forced into. Not only just women, but it was for African American women, especially because this was sprouting from the abolishment of slavery. So this was, as there was still racism in prominent in this time period, this was a huge fight back for these women to show that they can be treated just as equal as men, and they can be, and it doesn't matter your color of your skin, you can be treated just as equal as everybody. So the not only like as a social impact, we can see the psychology aspect of this in people's brains. There was actually a study done. There was a study about how, according to psychology experts, jazz reduces your stress level and it can increase critical thinking and creativity. As people, of course, people have to learn the technical aspect of it while playing their instrument and the mechanics of it, of how to move their fingers with the trumpet or the trombone. You definitely have to learn that first. But once we can start getting into the improvising, it, especially learning, like playing or listening to it, in both of those cases, we're getting that reduction of stress level. Because stress is an enemy to memory. It increases memory. It definitely helps people think critically and creatively, because as they're using that technical knowledge on stage, especially when you're playing, you're challenged to listen and react to your fellow performers and collaborate together in this performance when they were in their trios, when these first started sprouting up. Not only did jazz have an influence on the brain, but it also influenced other artists as music in general was evolving over the years. So for a lot of the fans of jazz, as they came to New York, there were a lot of musicians like Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Charlie Parker, Louis Armstrong. These were all popular attractions. So as these attractions influenced other bands, you can very clearly see how it can go from the Beatles to Pink Floyd to even hip-hop artists like Q-Tip, as they were all influenced by jazz over the years. And as the genre permeated musical culture to the point where it's nearly impossible to find somebody who wasn't influenced by jazz at some point. Any music artist, whether they were influenced in a bad way or a good way, everybody has different tastes. And this influence was only caused by the creation of jazz at the abolishment of slavery. So as we talked about with the women and even African American women who were able to sing jazz tunes at these jazz clubs, this was one of their many ways that they were able to speak out about this. As the abolishment of slavery happened, we were able to see more and more of this. Even Martin Luther King, like, you can take a look at one of my sources. Martin Luther King said he was a strong believer in jazz himself. He liked jazz, he liked hymns, and that was jazz, as jazz became a evolving part of hymns, as it changed from that into jazz, it was able to become something so much greater. And even though this was such an important aspect on our civil rights movement, and it still is today, sadly there was still, and still is sometimes, not as much today, but there was a stigma around jazz because it was known, especially at the beginning, as the black folk music, because it evolved from the traditional hymns that were sang during slavery. Sadly, people couldn't listen to it, they couldn't appreciate it, simply because, and this isn't a generalization, but some people could not appreciate it because they couldn't comprehend the idea that African American people that they despise and think of as less than human or not equal, they think that they could not create something as beautiful as jazz, so they wouldn't even give it a chance, sadly. So it is definitely important that jazz was a incredibly influential aspect of our history as music, as people, and overall in our society. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation and found the same.